push her wheelchair down the stairs, make it look like an accident. That's what I woke up to at midnight. A whisper, so soft it almost could have been part of a dream. For a moment I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but then my husband leaned close in the dark, his lips brushing my ear, and he said, "Don't scream. She tried it on me last year, and I survived." My breath caught, like the air itself had turned against me. I didn't move, didn't even dare to turn my head. The darkness pressed in, heavy, thick, and my heart hammered so loud I was sure it would give me away. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Loretta Mae Johnson, and before I tell you the rest, I'd like to know where you're watching from. Drop it down in the comments. Because what I'm about to share with you, it's the kind of story you might think only happens in movies, but it happened to me. Now let's start at the beginning. The room was silent again, but my mind wasn't. It was roaring, that whisper. It belonged to Angela, my daughter-in-law. I knew her voice. Sweet as honey most of the time, always polite in public, soft when she spoke to my son, but in the dark, those words carried something sharp enough to cut through my chest. I wanted to believe I misheard, that maybe she was on the phone, rehearsing some awful line from a TV show, but my husband's warning still clung to my ear like frost. She tried it on me last year, and I survived. What did that even mean? Did she push him, poison him? I lay there, still as stone, and thought back to the winter before, when he slipped in the garage and broke his arm. He swore it was nothing but ice on the pavement. Could that have been her? Every second dragged. I didn't want to breathe too loud. I imagined Angela standing in the hallway, listening, waiting for the sound of movement. The shadows around the doorway seemed thicker than they should have been. I told myself, "Stay calm, Loretta. Think." I've always been a woman who relied on reason. Before my body slowed down, before the wheelchair, I was a school librarian for 35 years. Patience, quiet observation, reading between the lines. That was my craft. But in that moment, none of it felt enough. The stakes weren't books on shelves. It was my life. By morning, the sun pushed through the curtains, but the chill in my bones didn't lift. Angela moved through the kitchen like nothing had happened, singing to herself, clattering pans, setting plates on the table. Her smile was the same sweet smile she wore at church, at family gatherings when neighbors dropped by. But I couldn't unhear what I'd heard. I sat in my chair at the kitchen table, watching her slice fruit with that long knife of hers. Her hands were steady, graceful even. She caught me looking and tilted her head, her lips curving in that polite way. "Everything all right, Mama Loretta?" she asked, her tone warm enough to fool anyone else. I smiled back because what else could I do? But inside I was rattled. My husband avoided my eyes as he stirred his coffee. He kept the conversation light, talking about the weather, the mail, the neighbor's new dog. Not one word about the midnight whisper, not one word about his chilling confession. That silence burned me worse than the whisper itself. If he knew she was dangerous, why let her stay? Why not tell our son? Or the police? I knew why. Because people don't believe you when the monster smiles in daylight. They call you bitter, jealous, paranoid. And if I said Angela had whispered about pushing me down the stairs, she'd just bat her eyelashes and say, "Oh, Mama Loretta must have been dreaming." That's the trick of real evil. It wears charm like perfume. As I sat there, hands folded tight in my lap, I thought back on my journey into this chair. A stroke 5 years ago. I recovered well, but my balance never came back the same. I learned to adapt, learned to accept help, but to someone like Angela, maybe I looked like an obstacle, a burden. That thought made my stomach twist. After breakfast, Angela came to wheel me toward the living room. Her hands on the back of my chair felt too heavy, too present. Each bump in the floor sent a shiver through me, and when we passed the staircase, I swear she slowed just a beat too long, her head turning slightly, her breath shifting. I didn't look back. I kept my eyes forward, jaw tight. Later that day, I sat by the window pretending to knit while my mind replayed the night. Every detail, every word, every chill. If my husband was telling the truth, then I wasn't the first target. And if Angela had tried once before, she wouldn't stop now. The question was, why was my husband still alive? And maybe more frightening, why had he kept that secret until now? By the time night came again, I was exhausted, but not from the day. From the weight of silence, from knowing danger could be smiling at me across the dinner table, from realizing the person I should trust most, my own son's wife, might be plotting my end. I told myself I would not sleep heavy tonight. I would listen. I would watch. And maybe, just maybe, I'd learn the truth. Because one thing was certain, whispers in the dark don't stop on their own. Morning light has a cruel way of making nightmares look foolish. I sat there in my chair, watching the golden rays spill across the kitchen floor, and part of me wanted to dismiss it all, to tell myself, Loretta May, you're too old to be losing sleep over whispers in the dark. Maybe you dreamed it. But the memory clung stubborn, like a burr on fabric. Angela's voice so distinct. My husband's warning so sharp. It wasn't just a dream. Angela was cheerful that morning, humming as she cooked. She wore a yellow dress, bright as sunshine, and moved around the kitchen like she owned it. The smell of frying bacon filled the air, but it turned my stomach sour. "Good morning, Mama Loretta," she said, placing a plate of eggs in front of me. Her smile was wide, practiced, the kind you'd pin on for company. "You sleep all right?" I nodded, but my throat was tight. My husband Samuel sipped his coffee without meeting my eye. He looked like a man studying the weather out of a window, refusing to see the storm brewing in his own living room. The day stretched on, long and uneasy. Angela insisted on helping me with everything, pouring my tea, fetching my blanket, pushing my chair from room to room. To anyone else, it would have looked like love, but I felt the weight of her hands on the back of my chair, heavy, calculating. When we passed the staircase, I noticed it again, that slight pause. Her grip tightened on the handles, just a flicker of pressure. She looked down those steps as though measuring distance. Then, quick as a blink, she smiled and said, "Careful of this drafty hallway, Mama. Wouldn't want you catching a chill." A chill was the least of my worries. In the afternoon, Samuel sat reading his newspaper, his brow furrowed in that way it always did when he wanted to seem absorbed. I rolled closer and whispered, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His eyes stayed glued to the print. "Not here," he muttered. "Not while she's around." That told me all I needed. He hadn't imagined it either. He believed in the danger as much as I did, but his silence, his cowardly, crushing silence, was going to get us both killed. I wanted to shake him, to scream, "You're supposed to protect me." But I knew better. Any crack in our calm would alert Angela, and if she suspected we were onto her, she might strike faster. It was then I started noticing the little things. My pill box on the counter moved, not where I left it. 2 of the capsules shifted out of order. I knew because I've been meticulous since my stroke. I never misplace a dose. The window in my bedroom cracked open when I never opened it myself. Too cold for fresh air, too deliberate to be mistake. And the refrigerator, a dish of pudding on the top shelf. 1 portion missing, but I hadn't eaten it. Neither had Samuel. Angela smiled when I asked casually, "Did you make this?" She said yes, with a tilt of her head. Her voice was sweet as molasses. I thought a little treat might be nice. My stomach turned. I thought back on who I used to be before the chair. Strong legs, long Sunday walks, teaching neighborhood kids to read during summers. I carried myself with pride, but sitting there, staring at her across the table, I felt stripped down, reduced to weakness. Angela saw it too, I think. Her eyes flickered over me like she was measuring my worth, like I was a piece of furniture she was tired of dusting. That look was worse than any whisper. After dinner, she offered to push me toward the den where Samuel was sitting. Her hands gripped the wheelchair handles, and I swear her fingers pressed just a little harder than needed. She leaned in, her voice low and syrupy. "You trust me, don't you, Mama Loretta?" I forced myself to chuckle. "Of course, child." But inside, my pulse was racing, because the truth was I trusted no one in that house anymore, not even Samuel, not fully. Later that night, when I lay awake again, I heard the faintest sound. Angela on the phone. Her voice was hushed, but sharp edges carried through the walls. "I told you," she whispered. "It won't be long. Just have the paperwork ready." The words cut like glass. Paperwork, insurance, inheritance. My chest tightened. This wasn't just malice. This was motive. I turned my face into the pillow and prayed, harder than I had in years, for strength, for clarity, for a way out. The next morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face looked older, more worn than it had just a week before. Fear carves lines deeper than time ever could. But in my eyes, I saw something else. Resolve. If Angela thought I was a passive old woman, she was wrong. I might not have strong legs anymore, but I still had my mind, and my mind was sharper than she knew. By the third day, the fear had hardened into something else. Determination. I told myself if Angela was plotting, then I would catch her, not by outmuscling her, but by outsmarting her. So I began to watch, quietly, carefully, the way a librarian studies a student who pretends to read but is really hiding a comic inside the history book. People always give themselves away if you know where to look. Angela spent a lot of time on her phone. She thought she was subtle, stepping into the hallway, lowering her voice, even taking calls out on the porch. But my ears have always been sharp. I'd tilt my head, listen to the rhythm of her words, the clipped tones. One afternoon, I heard her say, "I can't keep waiting. The sooner it's done, the sooner the money comes through." The money. That confirmed what my gut had already whispered. This wasn't just about dislike or impatience with an old woman. This was about inheritance, insurance, financial gain. I wasn't a mother-in-law to Angela. I was an obstacle between her and a payday. That night, after Angela went upstairs, I pressed Samuel again. "You knew," I whispered, my hands trembling in my lap. "You knew she tried something before. Why didn't you tell me?" His jaw clenched, his eyes dark. He rubbed his bad arm, the one that slipped on ice last winter. "Because no one would believe us, Loretta. Not our son, not anyone. He loves her, and she's clever." The ache in his voice told me this was true. He looked tired, like a man who'd been carrying a secret too heavy for too long. "Still," I snapped. "So you were just going to sit there and let her try again? First you, then me?" Samuel looked away. I thought if I stayed quiet, she'd lose interest. Foolish, dangerous. And now here we were, with Angela humming lullabies in the kitchen while plotting murder at midnight. The truth is, I'd never trusted her fully. I remember when my son brought her home for the first time, her nails painted sharp red, her smile wide enough to hide 100 secrets. Something about her eagerness unsettled me. She wanted too much, too fast. The wedding happened within months. No time to breathe, no time to truly know her. But my son was smitten, blind in the way young men can be. And so I bit my tongue, put on my nicest church hat, and smiled through the vows. Now I wondered if staying silent back then had planted the seeds for this nightmare. Angela had a way of slipping venom into kindness. One afternoon, while she spooned soup into my bowl, she said in a sweet voice, "You know, Mama Loretta, I don't know how you manage in that chair. Must be frustrating, being so limited." The word cut. Limited. She said it with a tilt of her head, eyes full of mock sympathy. I met her gaze steady. Frustration is better than foolishness, child, and I've still got both eyes working." Her smile froze for just a second. Then she laughed, brushing it off. But I saw it. That flicker of annoyance, that slip in the mask. The more I paid attention, the more cracks showed. Mail tucked under her purse instead of on the table. Bills marked overdue that she tried to hide before Samuel or I could see them. The credit card statement that came half-opened with charges that had no place in our budget. Boutiques, jewelry stores, salons. She was drowning in debt, and people drowning will climb on anyone's shoulders to save themselves, even if it means pushing the other person under. That explained the whispers about money, the urgency, the desperation. One evening, while folding laundry, I overheard Angela again. This time, she wasn't even trying to keep her voice low. "She won't last another month," she muttered into her phone. "It'll be fine. Just be ready when I call." My blood turned to ice. I gripped the armrest of my chair so hard my fingers ached. There it was, the timeline. She wasn't just thinking. She was planning, counting down. And I realized something else. She wasn't just dangerous to me. She was dangerous to Samuel, too. He'd survived her once, but if she thought the old man was standing in her way, she'd try again. That night, when Samuel and I sat together in the den, I lowered my voice. "We can't wait. We need proof. If we don't catch her red-handed, she'll keep smiling her way out of suspicion." He nodded, weary but firm. "Then we'll get proof." For the first time in days, I felt a strange surge of power. Fear was still in me, yes, but it was shifting into something sharper. Resolve. Angela thought she was playing a game with helpless prey, but she underestimated me. I may have been sitting in a chair, but I wasn't about to sit still. Fear can paralyze you, but it can also sharpen you. I decided if Angela wanted me gone, then I'd give her the stage she craved. Only I'd be the one writing the script. The plan started small. I acted weaker than I was, slowed my speech, let my hands tremble, pretended to forget things. Angela's eyes lit up every time I stumbled, like a wolf catching the scent of wounded prey. She thought I was slipping, fading, just waiting for a push. It was cruel, playing the role of frailty, but sometimes survival requires theater. One evening, I placed myself at the top of the staircase in my wheelchair. I asked Angela to fetch me some tea, leaving the chair positioned closer to the edge than usual, just enough to tempt her. Her footsteps came behind me, soft on the carpet. I felt her hands hover at the handles, then a pause. The silence stretched so long I thought my heartbeat might give me away. Then her voice, dripping with honey. "Mama Loretta, you shouldn't sit so close to the stairs. Dangerous spot for you." Her hands gripped the handles just a second too long before she rolled me back. She knew. She knew what I was doing, and instead of taking the bait, she tucked the knife back behind her smile. Samuel interrupted moments later, stepping into the hall with his usual shuffle. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his eyes darting between Angela's stiff smile and my rigid frame. "Of course," Angela sang, brushing past him toward the kitchen, "just making sure Mama's safe." Safe. The word curdled in my stomach. Samuel crouched next to me. "You need to be careful, Loretta. If she suspects—" "I want her to suspect," I hissed. "I want her to show herself." But that night, lying in bed, I realized the trap might have worked too well. If Angela thought I was playing her, she'd grow sharper, bolder. The next move wouldn't come with hesitation. It would come sudden and final. So I changed tactics. I began keeping a little recorder tucked in the blanket on my lap, the kind of device my grandson once used for school projects. Small, discreet, easy to start with a brush of my finger. Every time Angela leaned close, every time her voice softened into menace, I clicked it on. "Careful down this hallway, Mama Loretta," she cooed one day. "These rugs, you never know when one might slip out from under you." Click, recorded. Another time, while spooning soup into my bowl, she whispered just low enough for Samuel not to hear. Some folks say accidents happen all the time to people your age. Click, recorded. It wasn't the smoking gun yet, but it was smoke. And where there's smoke, there's fire. Then came the discovery that made my blood run cold. I was searching Samuel's desk drawers one evening, looking for fresh batteries for the recorder, when I found a stack of letters bound with twine. The paper was worn, the ink smudged. My hands shook as I untied them. They were all written in Angela's handwriting. Short notes, most unsigned, but unmistakably hers. Don't tell him yet. He doesn't need to know what happened. He'll never believe you anyway. The oldest one dated back almost 2 years, the winter Samuel slipped. I sat there trembling, the letters spread across my lap. My husband had known more than he told me. He'd kept proof, hidden it away, but never shown it to me. When I confronted him that night, his face sagged like a man carrying too many sins. I thought if I ignored it, she'd stop, he whispered. I didn't want to ruin our son's marriage, didn't want him to hate us. My heart ached with a strange mix of fury and pity. He wasn't protecting her. He was protecting our son, protecting the image of happiness, even if it meant living with a viper under our roof. But Angela was no longer content with subtlety. The very next day, while pushing me through the hall, she leaned in close enough that her breath tickled my ear. You know, Mama, she whispered, sometimes I wonder how much easier things would be if you just weren't here. Click, recorded. I didn't flinch. Didn't let her see the fire rising in me. I only nodded as if I hadn't heard. But inside, I knew the time for quiet watching was nearly over. She was circling closer, growing reckless. And sooner or later, she would make her move. That night, Samuel and I sat in the den, the storm rattling the windows outside. I played the recordings for him one by one. His face paled with each phrase, his hand tightening on the arm of his chair. We have enough, I said firmly. We can go to the police. But Samuel shook his head. Not yet. If she finds out, she'll twist it. She'll say you're paranoid. She'll say I'm confused. We need something undeniable. I hated the truth in his words. The world listens to youth and beauty, not old women in wheelchairs. Angela's mask of sweetness would win sympathy. So we agreed we'd wait, watch, and catch her with both hands around the crime. But the longer we waited, the closer danger crept. And deep down, I knew my trap hadn't caught her. It had only warned her I was awake. And Angela was far more dangerous awake than asleep. The storm came like judgment. Wind rattling the windows, rain thrashing the roof, thunder rolling like cannon fire. I sat in the den with a blanket over my lap, the lamps flickering, shadows stretching long across the walls. Samuel sat beside me, his face pale under the dim light. Then, with a crack of thunder, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the house whole. I gripped the arms of my chair. Samuel? I'm here, he said, but his voice was thin, nervous. From somewhere in the hallway, I heard footsteps, slow, steady, then a beam of flashlight cut through the dark. Angela's voice following behind. Don't worry, Mama Loretta. I'll take care of you. The way she said it made my skin crawl. Angela moved closer, the beam of light bobbing as she walked. Let me help you upstairs. Safer up there, away from the storm. But I knew what she really meant. Upstairs was where the staircase waited, yawning like a mouth. She came behind my chair, her hands curling on the handles. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing softly as if savoring the silence. Then, in a whisper, meant only for me. This could all be over so quickly. Click. My recorder captured every word. I steadied my voice, refusing to tremble. I know what you've been doing, Angela. Her hands froze. Excuse me? I heard you. I've heard everything, the phone calls, the whispers, the plans. You think I don't see, but I do. The flashlight tilted, throwing her face into sharp angles. Eyes wide, lips curling into something halfway between a smirk and a snarl. You think anyone's gonna believe you, she hissed. A sick old woman in a wheelchair clinging to paranoia? Samuel's too soft to say anything. And your son, she let out a cruel laugh. He'd never turn on me, not for you. Her words stung deeper than I expected, because part of me feared she was right. That's when Samuel stepped out of the shadows. His own flashlight clicked on, casting his lined face in pale light. He held a folder in his hand, the letters I'd found. You're wrong, he said, his voice shaking but firm. I should have stopped you sooner, but tonight I'm done hiding. Angela's eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat, the room was nothing but storm and silence. Then she laughed, low and cold. You two think you're clever. Recordings, letters, little games in the dark. But you don't understand. I've already won. She stepped closer, the flashlight beam cutting across my lap. Because I'm carrying your grandchild. The words slammed into me harder than thunder. I stared at her, my chest heaving. What did you say? Her smile widened. That's right. Pregnant. Your son's child. You think he'll believe your lies now? You think he'll throw me away? No, he'll defend me. He'll protect me. And you, her gaze sharpened into something deadly. You'll be gone before the baby even arrives. Samuel staggered back, his mouth opening, but no words came out. I felt the ground tilt beneath me, though my chair never moved. Pregnant. The very thought tangled everything. Proof of her cruelty meant little against the image of a glowing mother-to-be. People forgive monsters if they're carrying innocence. Angela leaned closer, her lips brushing my ear. So go ahead, play your tapes, show your letters. By the time anyone sees the truth, it'll be too late. But what Angela didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the recorder was still running, capturing every poisonous word, every chilling laugh. I forced my voice to stay steady. You won't win, Angela. Not this time. You've underestimated me. She straightened, that mocking smile still plastered on her face. We'll see. She turned on her heel and walked away, her flashlight beam disappearing into the dark. When the door shut behind her, Samuel collapsed into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. What do we do, Loretta? If she's pregnant... The storm raged outside, lightning splitting the sky, and in that blinding flash, I knew the truth. We couldn't wait any longer. Proof or not, child or not, Angela had declared war, and I intended to fight back with everything I had left. Morning came heavy after that storm. The house smelled of damp wood, and silence pressed in like a second skin. Samuel and I didn't sleep. How could we? Angela's whisper about pregnancy echoed through my mind on a loop. By breakfast, she was back to her sunshine self, hair neatly combed, humming as she scrambled eggs, moving like a woman with no shadow, but I could still feel the venom in her words from the night before. Samuel slid a look at me across the table. His eyes said what neither of us dared to speak aloud. It's time. That evening, we called our son, asked him to come by, no explanations. When he walked through the door, his face lit up at the sight of his wife, then softened when he saw me. Mama, he said warmly, kissing my cheek. Everything all right? I swallowed. My throat felt raw. Sit down, baby, we need to talk. Angela sat close beside him, her hand already draped over his arm like armor. She looked at me, her smile sharp as a blade hidden in velvet. Samuel set the folder of letters on the table. We've kept quiet too long, he said, his voice low. But last night it went too far. You need to hear this. I pressed play on the recorder. Angela's voice filled the room, the soft hiss of her whispers spilling into every corner. This could all be over so quickly. Then, sometimes I wonder how much easier things would be if you just weren't here. The words hung in the air like smoke. My son's eyes widened, his head snapping toward Angela. She laughed, an actual laugh. This is ridiculous. Mama must have edited that. You know she's been confused lately, baby. Always misplacing things, imagining shadows. But her voice trembled just slightly, and my son caught it. Samuel opened the folder and slid the letters across the table. These are yours, Angela. I kept them hidden, thought maybe you'd stop, but you didn't." Angela's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. And that silence was louder than any confession. But then her eyes flashed. She straightened, her hand clutching her stomach. "You can't do this to me. I'm carrying your grandchild." The words hit my son like a blow. His jaw dropped, his body tensing. "Is that true?" he whispered. Angela leaned close, nodding rapidly. "Of course. They're just trying to destroy us, baby. They've never wanted me here. They've always hated me." His eyes darted between her and me, between Samuel's trembling hands and the recorder still humming on the table. I saw the war inside him. Love against truth, loyalty against survival. Then Angela made her mistake. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice breaking into a snarl. "None of this matters. Once she's gone, it'll all be ours. Don't you see? We'll finally be free." The words spilled out too fast, too raw to be pulled back. My son's face crumpled, the color draining as if she'd struck him. "Angela," he whispered, horror crawling into his eyes. She froze, realized too late she'd dropped the mask. The room broke open after that. Samuel stood, his voice shaking but steady. "Get out. Pack your things and go. You won't touch this family again." Angela tried to protest, to claw her way back into charm, but the evidence was too heavy. The recorder, the letters, and now her own mouth betraying her. My son didn't touch her when she reached for him. He pulled back, tears filling his eyes. "You almost killed them," he whispered. "You almost—" His voice cracked. "I can't believe I didn't see it." Angela left that night, her suitcase dragging across the floor, her sobs echoing in the hall, but none of it moved me, because I'd seen the real Angela, and tears were just another weapon she knew how to wield. In the weeks that followed, papers were filed, lawyers got involved, rumors spread through town about debt, deceit, betrayal. Whether or not she was pregnant, no one ever saw proof. She vanished into the world she'd built for herself, leaving behind nothing but ashes. My son carries the weight of it still. He blames himself, though I tell him he shouldn't. Love blinds and wolves wear sheep's clothing better than we like to admit. Samuel walks lighter now, the burden of silence lifted from his shoulders. And me? I sit in my chair, looking out the window at the changing seasons, stronger than I've felt in years. Because I survived. Not just the whispers, not just the danger. I survived being underestimated. So if you're listening, wherever you are, hear me well. Trust your instincts. Don't let anyone tell you danger is only in your head, and never, ever mistake a smile for safety. Because sometimes the real threat doesn't come from the shadows outside. It comes from the whispers inside your own home.